Hello and welcome to the Fast Break pregame show. My name is Aman Kidwai, manager of the UConn blog and the Fast Break newsletter. I'm joined by our basketball writer, Patrick Martin, as always. At long last, we are on to the Final Four. The UConn Huskies plowed through the NCAA tournament competition on the way to their second straight Final Four, seventh all time. They're taking on Bama on Saturday, and the winner of Purdue versus NC State with a win. We're going to preview that and more today. This show is a production of the Fast Break newsletter, an outlet featuring in-depth reporting, analysis, and a podcast about UConn men's basketball. This show is also a production of 22 Threads, purveyors of fine t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and other gear inspired by the Connecticut culture and lifestyle. They recently launched a new line of Hassan Diarra gear that you should all go check out. That's 22threads.com. After beating up San Diego State and throttling Illinois in a manner very similar to last year's Sweet 16 and Elite Eight games, the Huskies are in Phoenix for the Final Four, despite some travel issues. Now they're getting ready for the Crimson Tide. Patrick, first, we have got to talk about the way the Huskies are dominating their competition right now. A 30-0 run in the Elite Eight, holding each of their opponents in the regional semifinal and final to 52 points. Why are the Huskies better in March than they were during the season?
It's the big guy from Bristol. Whatever nickname you want to use. I'm partial to the Connecticut Kaiju. I know that's kind of a mouthful. Kling Kong, whatever you call him. Donovan Clingan. This is who everyone thought Donovan Clingan would be to start the year. He had the two injury setbacks, getting himself up to speed. Hurley was excellent in the season about ramping him up, and now he's unleashed him. He put up 22 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 blocks against Illinois, and we were all there. That 5 really should have been closer to 8. He's averaging 16 points, 10 rebounds, 3.5 blocks, and shooting 68% from the field in the tournament. He's just been an absolute monster. Illinois shot 3 of 25 from inside the arc in Klingen's 22 minutes on the floor, and then went 0 for 19, 0 when challenging him directly. They went 50 points at one point without a basket. And yet Brad Underwood, if he blocks 100, he blocks 100. And continually just tried to test Clingan, and Clingan passed every single time. He's the reason that, UConn can shoot 3 of 17 from 3 or whatever they shot against Northwestern, or have your All-American Tristan Newton lay a goose egg from the field and still blow out one of the hottest teams in the country in Illinois. Now, I know it's the Elite Eight, everyone's hot, but Illinois had the number 2 ranked Ken Pom offense in the country, and UConn made them look like a JV team to end the first half and for most of the second. In that 30-0 run, the triple kill shot or the trill shot, it was an extended sample size of like what UConn has consistently been doing well all season, which is transition from defense to offense. I don't necessarily mean fast breaks. I just mean stops to easy baskets. We know like UConn's pace is on the slower side, and we'll get into that. But if Donovan Clingan is stopping shots at the rim and then finishing the way he is on the other end because of UConn's spacing and there's no doubles, it doesn't matter if UConn can't hit water from a boat. They're going to have a puncher's chance in every game. And I can't wait to see when the shots start falling because, what's going to stop them?
Yeah, the way that this defense is playing and what they're doing to other teams, what they did to Illinois, absolutely demoralizing. And you talk about Clingan getting healthy and what that has meant for the team. He's also apparently improved his fitness, but also Steph Castle missed time early in the year. This was a freshman who missed his, games 2 through 6 approximately in the season, and he needed some time to ramp up as well. But what he's doing on the perimeter, stopping other teams' best scorer, stopping some of the best scorers in the country, Boo Buie at Northwestern, Terrence Shannon, Illinois. These are people who you have to go into a game and be mildly concerned about, but you get a few minutes into the first half and you go, oh, Steph's got this guy locked up. It doesn't matter that he's averaging 28 points or whatever going into it. These guys are having their worst games of the year against Steph Castle, and UConn. Now, you mentioned Donovan Clingan, of course, playing a huge role in that. It's really the combo of the two, in my opinion, the two elite defenders and what they bring to be able to funnel those people. You mentioned the blocks. Someone on the stat team has got to look at that and go back to the film room and figure out what they've done wrong. Five was way off, but altered shots don't show up on the stat sheet. There's nothing on the stat sheet for when a dude dribbles up and then just goes nope and dribbles away, which is a very frequent occurrence when Donovan Clingan is out there on defense. It's what makes it tough on other teams. I mean, for Illinois to post its worst shooting performance of the season in the Elite Eight, their worst EFG by 8 percentage points. That stuff is just absurd. Klingon really earning it as well in the mock draft universe. Now seeing his name mentioned among the top 3 picks, possibly a number 1 overall pick. It does not matter what anyone says about this draft class and its quality. That's amazing, and he's playing his way into that, which is a testament to him, testament to Dan Hurley and the staff for the situation that they've put him in, and that they've managed it at. Also, just want to add, this past week, just as a highlight, we saw a bit of a homecoming for Alex Karaban, the Boston kid. I wanted to share a couple of stories since I had the chance to interview a few of his coaches and high school teammates. This guy, basically in 8th grade, in the Boston area, Massachusetts, he was Steph Castle on his varsity basketball team in 8th grade. He was an 8th grader on varsity at this high school that is now defunct and doing well. He plays at a different school as a freshman, his hometown, Algonquin, and he absolutely lights it up there as a freshman. And his coach has to say to him, "Dude, it's time for you to move on." Imagine being so good you're telling a freshman, like, you're good. You're out of here, buddy. I gotta send you somewhere else, even though we can win. So I just think that's cool. Caravan came up as a very different kind of recruit and a very different mindset as a UConn player, but to really hear about him as like that phenom, that local phenom, and what he did, and everyone in that area just caring so much about his story, I thought was a really cool moment for Caravan. He didn't have his best performances. He had 2 early threes in the San Diego State game, and he also had that amazing dunk where he had the opportunity to hang on the rim a little bit against Illinois. But I imagine that was a good time for him. He's a Celtics fan. Klingon's a Celtics fan. Patrick, I know you're a Celtics fan too. How did it feel to be in the building, take that all in, and also see some UConn Huskies really experiencing some of the same thing?
Well, I was grilling Hassan Diarra after the game because he's a big Knicks fan, and Hassan, he's gonna say what he thinks, and I'm like, do you think it's gonna be Celtics Knicks? He goes, oh yeah, 100%. Like there was not a second of pause. He goes, it's gonna be Celtics Knicks, and he didn't necessarily say like who he had winning because obviously the Celtics are a wagon, not unlike UConn at this point. I
I
should
wouldn't
add.
know.
Um, but he just said like if the Knicks end up knocking them off, like Alex will never hear the end of it. He said like he has chirps ready nonstop, and he looked over at him like as he said it, just like oh yeah, he's in dead serious, just like oh yeah, he'll never hear the end of it. So that was cool, and yeah, it was fun to watch Boston's game yesterday in against the Thunder and just see that court and to think that that was where we were. Um, and yeah, I think we have to talk them on like we were boots on the ground. We were in a prime vantage point. Some would say the texts have been flowing in. People making fun of my hairline, my Roback hoodie. No free ads, sorry. But what were your top two or just general observations that from our vantage point that you wouldn't readily see via watching the game on TV?
Hmm. I think I'm obsessed with following the head coaches' interactions with the assistant coaches, the refs, the way you can kind of like understand the way Hurley is working the refs all game from the start. It's something you see when it's something I get to see at XL games when I go as media. Um, but this to see it kind of up close and in an Elite Eight game, and what's kind of the interactions beforehand, what they're talking about, when they're making substitutions, when they're deciding about substitutions. There's a moment where in the first half where Donovan Clingan goes to Dan Hurley and he's like, now. He's eager to get back into the game. You may recall Clingan leaves the game with one foul. So I just think all of that stuff is super interesting to see. Towards the end, obviously they're really celebratory. So I thought another highlight for me was just seeing Kimani Young turn to the bench and go, "Start the plane, start the plane." It's like there's maybe I don't 2 minutes left. You've absolutely put this game away, right? Like you did it 2 years in a row, the Elite Eight, and you're chilling in the final few minutes. You're getting ready to put Apostolos and Andrew Hurley in the Elite Eight game. So I think just the genuine joy of the bench celebration. Like I think you see it from far away, you see it on TV, you see it, um, but just to see it kind of like build and then crescendo along with the home crowd, it was super cool stuff. And yeah, I mean, I hope it was just a great experience for everyone. I think for someone like Caravan and Klingon, it absolutely was a particularly special one. But um, yeah, those were kind of my highlights. What about you?
Well, I also think it's funny that Kamani was doing the start the plane stuff now, given the logistical troubles that the team has
Yeah,
encountered. We probably all should have listened to Kamani and started the plane then, and
that's
maybe
true.
they would have not had those snafus. But in regarding the bench, it's it's so infectious in person. And I think Hurley really leads with this authenticity that has like a trickle down effect from everybody. I remember watching Luke Murray on the sidelines when he was an assistant at Fairfield, and he's quiet and meek on the side. And now he's fist pumping just like Hurley. He's doing the too small
Oh yeah.
uh, sign when Klingon backs down Coleman Hawkins. He Hurley, I think, has done such a good job of imbuing the program, and I mean the assistants, the managers, the players, the walk-ons, with this earned confidence, and they're all having fun doing it. There's I didn't see a single person, with their head down if they weren't playing well. Samson Johnson struggled in that first half when Klingon went out and UConn had kind of put themselves back into the game. And what does he do in the second half when Klingon comes out? He swats one and goes right down with a really impressive like catch, gather, and follow up. And that's just one example that you see. As far as in the moment of the vantage point, it was great to see Donovan Klingon break Larry David's brain. Having hearing Larry David yell at Dan Hurley to change your strategy, Brad, change your strategy, stop going at Donovan Klingon. Um, if Larry David can figure that out, it's not clear why Brad Underwood couldn't, but that's a story for another day. I love to see Larry also with earplugs in, very on brand there. Um, and I just think, yeah, that those are kind of like the biggest broader observations. And then I think Klingon's mobility for a dude that size, like it doesn't really stand out unless you only watch him for a couple of possessions and how he's moving. And then when you stand next to him and you see his size, it is not normal. It is a reason why he's a potential top 3 pick. There's a reason why people are saying Rudy Gobert or Brooke Lopez now, because his combination of athleticism and mobility, his timing, all of the little things that, especially, I think, are stark in contrast to a certain player on the other side of the bracket that shall remain nameless, um, makes what UConn is doing so special.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just looking ahead, the Huskies have maintained status as heavy favorites throughout the NCAA tournament. Remains the case as they go into this Alabama game where they are double-digit favorites, looking like 11 points, 11 and a half, depending on your source. No free ads, as we mentioned. But Patrick, how are you feeling about this Alabama matchup on Saturday?
Well, first, I want to give Nate Oates some flowers here. In his 5 years, he has 2 SEC regular season titles, 2 SEC tournament titles, 3 Sweet 16s, and then now one Final Four. Thank you, Bobby Hurley, for discovering him while Hurley was on the recruiting trail up in Buffalo. Because I mean, he's a tremendous coach, and we'll get into kind of his style later. But what UConn did to poor Illinois is not normal. And because of like the high variance way that Alabama plays, they are like one hot shooting night from doing what like seems impossible now. Alabama's made 11 threes in 3 of its 4 tournament games, and they'll probably need at least like 15 to 20 to keep up Saturday. And that's not disrespect, that's just how the Tide play. And historical context is there's plenty of teams out there that were unstoppable until they weren't. You know, Kentucky's 40-0 destiny was tripped up by Frank Kaminsky, of all people, in Wisconsin in 2015. Duke, 1999, 9.5 points favorites against somebody. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. Um, there's I think a little too much writing off of not UConn's dominance. Like, you don't want to discount what UConn is doing because it is absurd, as we've been talking about all season. But you don't want to discount that anything can happen in a single elimination tournament. And plus, like, Phoenix is a neutral area geographically. If there's a whiff of any upset brewing, neutral fans are gonna want to see that fireworks. So that's kind of like my caveat heading into like any kind of Alabama preview. Do you want to get into the weeds now?
Yeah, I mean, let me set you up a little. I mean, I can understand the need to be cautious, but we're talking about winning games by 30, winning games by 25 in the Sweet 16, Elite 8. UConn playing at a high level. Alabama, I'm seeing they're ranked 105th in defensive efficiency. I mean, UConn's going to go through that like a buzzsaw, and then yeah, I mean, it seems like it would need you would just need a remarkable 3-point shooting performance for the win, which is just kind of like the recipe for the upset. So I don't know what Bama has that's special. Would be interested in your thoughts.
Well, they have something that it just came across my wire. I've had people coming up to me, tears in their eyes, saying, Patrick, how is UConn going to stop Alabama's 3-man weave? They play so fast. They
That's
are
right.
so effective at that 3-man weave. I don't think UConn can keep up. I don't think they're in shape. Uh, I don't think Donovan Clingan is running everywhere. I don't think Samson Johnson is running everywhere. So yeah, it's kind of concerning that Alabama plays so fast and UConn has, apparently a bunch of slow-footed folks that aren't ready for a track meet.
That's
I don't
right.
know.
Yeah. I saw this video going around and I've been showing it to people. Again, like you said, tears, tears. All of a sudden they start calling people up going, "Have you seen how fast Alabama is?" I think that reporter Nick from Alabama has clearly watched a lot of basketball. He's seen a lot of basketball practices, and that guy knows what he's talking about. So that definitely is not a drill that you run in elementary school. That every single person who has ever played organized basketball knows, and definitely not something that was done at a very basic level. It's actually really terrifying stuff. I'm sure that's actually probably why UConn's flight was delayed. Was Hurley was showing that to some of the flight crew, and they were just like distracted, not setting things up correctly. That's why they probably had the machinery failure. Was those guys were distracted trying to figure out the answer to the question, how will Dan Hurley stop the 3-man weave?
Yeah, there weren't pilot hours. The pilots lost their hours just scour. They had to help Hurley out with the film. Hurley handed them the iPad and just said, "Please,
I'm at my wits' end.
I need your help here. I can't. I don't know what to do with this weave. It's Please untangle this weave."
We're horrified. We're horrified. What can UConn do to hang with Alabama's pace, Patrick?
Okay, well, I mean, do we have it out of our system? Should
And
we?
scene. Yeah.
Because I don't know. I know that guy doubled down and was just like, "Oh, I didn't mean it like that," but man, for a team that thrives so much on chips on your shoulder, They really did not, or they really did UConn some favors, I think. But I mean, all right. So let's get into it here. I think UConn has like the top two individual defenders left in the Final Four in Klingon and Castle. Maybe even three if you want to add Hassan Diarra. Like you said, Castle has guarded Devin Carter, Boo Buie, Terrence Shannon Jr. Um, Mark Sears is the final boss in that sense. He's scored 22 points or more in 8 of his last 9 games. He put up 7 threes against Clemson, including this deep logo one. He's the second leading scorer in the tournament behind Zach Edey, shooting 44% from three, and he's like your go-to clutch guy down the stretch. He's 6'1", but like stocky in the Jalen Brunson build, if that helps anybody. So it will be interesting to see how Castle uses his size advantage, because Sears can get some leverage on there. It'll be interesting to see how Castle can do that without fouling. Um, Against Clemson, Alabama hit like a ton of corner and shrink threes. Shrink threes is going to be what I think could be the buzzword on Saturday, which is just a basketball Nick word for drive and kick. So like, space the floor out, penetrate, defense shrinks, kick it out to an open shooter. Um, but Bama also relied on like two absurd outlier performances from Nick Pringle inside and then Jaron Stevenson. They combined for 36 points against Clemson, and they average a total of 12 points per game. And that's the type of March outlier stuff that like you need to make a deep run when you're not supposed to. Because the narrative on Bama is that they're a year late to the party. Last year was supposed to be their breakthrough with Brandon Miller, Javon Quinterly, all this NBA talent, and they got bounced by San Diego State. And in the offseason, they lost 3 assistants, the whole damn team, essentially, except Sears left. Um, you factor in how they kind of stumbled into the tournament, losing 4 of their last 6, and then plus the high degree of variance with their unbalanced defense offense metrics. They were a popular upset pick. And hand up, mea culpa, I thought Pat Kelsey in the Charleston Cougars were going to take down Bama. I was never a believer in them, and I'll take my medicine on that. I do think Hurley has some familiarity. First of all, him and Oates are boys. You've seen that in the interactions. They kind of coach in the same style. They're like minded individuals. I'll just say. Preston Murphy is an assistant there now, and he was on Hurley's staff at Rhode Island. So interesting little scouting nugget and wrinkle to keep in mind. But Alabama did something what I like. They reloaded instead of going out and getting the top five players or the blue chip prospects. They went out and got like mid major guys that were leveling up. Grant Nelson, by the way, of South Dakota State, and then Aaron Estrada down the road here from Hofstra. They were kind of, again, more bulletin board material, both of which those guys, when they were coming in, were ranked higher in various preseason clickbaity transfer rankings than a certain Cam Spencer. So you know damn well that Hurley is pinning that on Spencer's locker room in the next couple of days. Rotation wise, they go about 8 or 9 deep, and 6 of that unit have launched over 100 threes per game. Um, and all about flexibility and positionless. They try a lot of different guys around the trio of Sears, Estrada, and Nelson. Sometimes they go big with Jaron Stevenson and Nick Pringle out there. Sometimes you put Rylan Griffin at the 4. But another interesting wrinkle I noted was 2 lefties in the backcourt, which I can't think of the last time UConn played 2 combo guards that were both lefties. Going down the leaderboard here, Nelson, 6'11's floor spacer. He's only hit 2 threes in the tournament, but he's still an inside out threat, kind of in the Coleman Hawkins mode, just with a trash dash. Skilled, lengthy, but inconsistent. You have to hope that Klingon and Johnson's physicality can disrupt him. Pringle was a beast against Clemson. I mean, he had my dad and I watching that game saying, wow, he's going to cause UConn some problems. He had 6 offensive rebounds, 13 free throw attempts. Sears was hitting all the shots, but Pringle was like the garbage pail man down low. Very interesting to see if he, is that a breakout performance? Is it an outlier? How does Caravan handle his size and physicality? Will be something to watch. Um, Estrada, the boat right to Sears's Shabazz, if you will, the second point guard. He put up 19 against North Carolina, but he's kind of in like a month long shooting slump. Doesn't matter. He has the green light. The whole team does, and we'll get into that later. Sophomore Rylan Griffin has made like a leap and is an excellent off ball shooter. Someone you kind of always have to know where he is on the court. Latrell Wrightsell will be healthy. He hurt his head. I think it was a concussion against Grand Canyon. He hit 5 threes versus Charleston, and he's what given their weak defense, he's their best 3-and-D guy. And then Stevenson, as I mentioned, he's a 6'11 former 5-star, so he has the talent. Did he figure it out against Clemson? Does he get more minutes? That will be something to watch for sure. But no, so more on Oates and like his whole style. It is threes and layups, strict diet, no cheat meals, shoot early, shoot often. They are allergic to the mid range. For example, Stevenson is a 28% shooter from three, and he took 8 threes against Clemson. So it's kind of funny to be so analytically driven in some areas, but then taking guys who aren't good shooters and saying, yeah, just fire them off. Like eventually variance will take hold. I think if you're jacking up threes all game and they're not falling, it could get ugly fast because, as we mentioned before, UConn is so deliberate with their actions. That's a lot of time defending. If you're Alabama, you're going down the court, you chuck up a three, UConn goes, runs their stuff and gets an easy bucket. Then you have to go through it again. So the possession battle is something to monitor as well. I think overall it's like a great style fit for UConn. I know people have said, "Oh, this is some the type of team UConn hasn't faced all year," which is true. But clinging inside being so good at contesting straight up, and then being elite at running teams off the 3-point line, just funnel them into the big guy and force Alabama to play like Illinois. You got to mention the defense a little bit. They're giving up an average of 81.5 points per game in the tournament. So I saw someone online compare them to Creighton. It's like, well, Creighton has Ryan Kalkbrenner in a top elite defense. I see this Alabama team a lot more like Miami of 2023, with like an offense that has found its high gear and is scoring at an elite rate, but is an absolute turnstile defensively. We all know how that went. I thought it was interesting to watch like the North Carolina game because North Carolina was, number one seed. They didn't necessarily lock up North Carolina. Like the Tar Heels just stopped hitting shots and they essentially like fell off Elliot Cadu and just kind of packed it in and focused on RJ Davis. You can't do that against UConn, no matter how big the shooting slumps are for Newton, Caravan, and Spencer. So with all that said and done, like a 90 burger is really within reach if UConn gets untracked. That's what I got.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely in line for a high scoring game here, and for Bama, definitely don't like these late season losses. They lost towards the end of their season to Kentucky. They lost at home to Tennessee. They lost to Florida twice, including their conference tournament opener. And I think in terms of this pace thing, we've seen UConn able to beat any type of team that's part of their structure and strategy. But the other thing is just with pace, that's not about how fast or athletic UConn is. That's about when in the shot clock they're shooting, and half of it is when in the shot clock the other team is shooting. It's not like it's not a like for like descriptor of how quickly a team is running up and down the court or not, or how quickly they run their sets. UConn runs like hell on offense, but waits to take a good shot, and that's why their pace is a little slower. So just think it's a little off to say UConn hasn't seen a team necessarily.
Well, I saw a stat that said UConn, they're 4-0 when they play with more than 70 possessions per game, and then when you move that down to 69 or more, they're 9-0. And in fact, UConn's 3 losses were the slowest pace games of the year. And having seen in person, they can play whatever style they want. In the first half against Illinois, you saw Hurley telling Newton to slow it down and kind of get into get run your actions, run your counter sets, and I think there was an adjustment made in the second half of like, no, I don't think they're covering in transition. And sure enough, how many times do we see like Goody or Damas just lose their guy in transition? Hassan Diarra sprinting up the court. Um, if there's a team that is prone to a weak transition defense, UConn will exploit that. I think so. There's not really a certain style that UConn struggles with. I think.
Yeah, and again, the possibility for this one to get ugly fast, I think, really is there. um, I think that's all we have on Bama, but we have really enjoyed doing this show on a weekly basis. We've enjoyed seeing the comments. Please do give us a like or subscribe if you get the chance. We're going to do a special live ish episode before the national championship game if UConn ends up playing in it. So, Patrick, let's just for a second take a gander at the opposite side of the bracket. Do you think NC State has a shot against Purdue here?
Look, listen. There is no bigger fan of DJ Burns than me. And I have no, I have receipts to prove it. I texted a basketball group chat of mine back in November during the bye tournaments when DJ Burns was carving up, I think it was BYU. Now they lost that game. I have the text and you can pull it up. I said DJ Burns is my favorite non-UConn college basketball player.
Wow.
So a I have been a DJ Burns shareholder all year. Diamond hands. I'm not selling, and his unique game could give Purdue fits. And look, that's one where you kind of have to throw out the analytics and in the numbers because it doesn't really show much for NC State. Yet they continue to figure it out. Kevin Keats has tightened up that defense, um, and Burns has the pedigree to slow down Edie, I think. Now, at the same time, Purdue has a deep playbook with a giant rim protector surrounded by shooters. If that sounds familiar, it's probably because it's dollar store UConn. And look, I think we did reserve the right to say that, considering UConn beat Illinois by 25 and Purdue beat them by a combined 11, while also splitting with Northwestern. Look, Edie's a monster. I'm not discounting that. I'm not gonna wade. I'm not taking the bait of is he the best player of our generation or any type of clickbait crap like that. He had 22 free throws against Tennessee. His 40 points was more than half of Purdue's total. They dump it in the middle and force teams to foul or double, and he's so good at kicking it to the open shooter with all the spacing that Painter has. UConn and also to answer your question, NC State, they don't necessarily need to send a double because they have a guy on the inside that can bang with Edie. Um, I I think the result is determined on the other end of the court, where Purdue could also pack the paint and force NC State, and then potentially force UConn to beat them from the outside. So then it comes down to can DJ Horn continue to shred people in the mid range if Edie's in drop coverage. That's just kind of like my surface level look at that game.
At any rate, we'll get Purdue versus NC State in the early game, and then UConn tipping off at 8:49 Eastern on Saturday. Looking forward to the Final Four and the festivities in Phoenix. Patrick and I will be there for it. If you find us, say hi. Thank you all for watching.